Hey everybody, it's Nathaniel Campius here today with a video about the liar paradox. Now, in this video, I shall attempt to solve the liar paradox, and here's my thesis. The liar paradox, or in other words, the proposition, this proposition is false, has no content, and it's quite possible, my thesis is that it has no content, and it's probably not even it's not even a proposition. My thesis is that I can't say it's a proposition now because I just said that it's not a proposition as my thesis. So the expression that says this proposition is false, that seems to represent a proposition, does not in fact represent a proposition, and here's why. So let's begin with what constitutes a proposition. A proposition must be about something. Okay, that's the definition of a proposition, whether it's a subject and a verb and a predicate or something else, like in order to do something you first must do this. It's always saying something about something. And the proposition this and I shall argue that the proposition this proposition is false, or the whatever you call it that says this proposition is false is not saying anything about anything, and here's why. So let's take the proposition this proposition is true, because the proposition this proposition is false it's very tempting to say, oh, then if it's false then it's true, and if it's true then it's false, if it's false then it's true, and if it's true then it's false, and then you go on and ad infinitum regression, and that's terrible. And you can't have that in logic because it doesn't make any sense. Okay, and so anyways, all propositions must be about something. So if a proposition, even if a proposition references another proposition, like if proposition A says that proposition B is true, then proposition A's content is the content of B. So if proposition B is that all dogs are brown, then proposition A is saying that all dogs are brown. Proposition A's content is not both proposition B and proposition B's content, because a proposition is defined by its content. So proposition B is its content. So there's not some imaginary article of content called proposition B standing besides the actual content of proposition B. So with that logic, if proposition A, if let's take a proposition that says this proposition is true. Now it's saying that what this proposition is saying is that a proposition is true. But that proposition that it's saying is true is simply saying that a proposition is true. Now, saying that a proposition is true, that as we have already figured out, a proposition in itself, you can't just say that a proposition itself is an article of content. So it has to have some other content about reality. So this proposition is true has no other content about reality than itself, and itself can't be an article of content. So this proposition is true is not even a proposition. And now let's take the proposition this proposition is false, and this proposition is false is just the same thing as this proposition is true, because it's just making it's making a truth value statement about itself. And you can't make a truth value statement about, and a proposition can't make a truth value statement about itself, because as we have established, a proposition is not an article of content. Alright, so, and it's very tempting to just say, oh, well, logically, if this proposition is false, saying this proposition is false means that that proposition is true and blah, blah, blah. But we have to look meticulously at what the content of the proposition is, what the proposition actually is saying is false. And then we realize that it's not saying anything is false, and therefore it's not a proposition. So there you have, so the liar paradox isn't even a statement that seems to be contradictory. It isn't even a proposition that we can solve and say, oh, this is the true meaning of this proposition. The liar's paradox is an illusion. It's an illusion. It's an expression that seems to represent a proposition. Like an expression is like a spoken word or a written word or something, and you know, written words are just ink on paper, and spoken words are just vocal cords making sounds. But what matters is what they represent, but this particular thing, this particular expression doesn't represent anything. It doesn't represent anything, and that right there for you is the solution to the liar paradox, or the solution to the illusion of the liar paradox. Thank you very much. See you later.